Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, US Secretary of State hopes Hamas will accept Israel's extraordinary generous Gaza truce and hostage release offer. Biden asks leaders from Qatar and Egypt to exert all efforts to secure the release of hostages in separate phone calls. Hamas to return with a written response.
To decide. And they have to decide quickly.
In a recent gun attack in the US, 4 officers fatally shot at and 4 others wounded in North Carolina. 2 suspects held after 3-hour standoff in Charlotte. Flash floods wreak havoc in central Kenya. Over 50 people swept away. Toll may rise. Police initially blames the flooding on a burst dam. G7 countries set global climate precedent, commits to coal phase out by 2035 with shutting down their coal-fired power plants in the first half of the 2030s. Ministers will issue a final communique with the details on Tuesday. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Hamas to accept a ceasefire proposal on his visit to the Middle East. The proposal includes a 40-day truce in return for the release of hostages and the prospect of displaced families being allowed back to northern Gaza. Blinken travelled to Saudi Arabia to meet with US allies before heading to Jordan and Israel. Nick Harper gets us more from Washington.
Topping the agenda for Antony Blinken has been trying to secure a ceasefire deal and trying to secure the release of the remaining hostages held by Hamas. The Secretary of State met with multiple officials in Saudi's capital Riyadh on Monday, including with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and he met foreign ministers from 5 other Arab countries. Blinken described the updated ceasefire proposal as extraordinarily generous and urged Hamas to accept the deal.
Hamas has before it a proposal that is extraordinarily generous on the part of Israel. And in this moment, the only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas. They have to decide, and they have to decide quickly. So we're looking to that, and I'm hopeful that they will make the right decision.
Israel has scaled back the number of hostages it's asking Hamas to free in the first phase of this potential truce. Reports suggest it's reducing its demand from 40 hostages to 33 and requesting that women, older people and those who are sick are prioritised. Blinken also discussed increasing the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in Gaza, and he warned Israel not to go ahead with its planned ground offensive on Rafah in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Washington worries that Israel still intends to press ahead with an assault in an area where hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians, most of them displaced because of fighting in other parts of Gaza, are currently sheltering. Blinken continues his diplomatic tour, visiting Jordan and Israel on Tuesday. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has urged leaders from Qatar and Egypt to exert all efforts to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas. Biden held a separate phone call with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. He also discussed the dangers of a military escalation in Rafah. Besides, the 2 presidents also stressed on the necessity to work to prevent expansion of the conflict and reaffirmed the importance of the 2-state solution as a means to achieve security, peace and stability in the region. The US military has started building a large floating pier off Gaza's coast to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid. Ships will deliver aid from Cyprus to the pier, where it will be loaded onto trucks to transfer across Gaza. The pier will be attached to the shore by a temporary causeway, which the trucks will use. US officials say the pier will be operational by early May. Once operational, up to 150 trucks of aid could be delivered a day with 2 million meals. Now that is enough to feed almost all of the territory's 2.3 million population. The World Central Kitchen, a US-based charity, resumes relief work in the Gaza Strip after a nearly month-long suspension. The World Central Kitchen said in a press statement that they have so far distributed more than 43 million meals and are eager to provide millions more. The organization stressed on the importance of delivering food aid to northern Gaza, noting that approximately 8 million meals are ready to enter Gaza through the Rafah border crossing. The charity suspended its humanitarian aid operations in Gaza on 2nd April after 7 of its staff members were killed in an Israeli strike. Let's turn focus to Russia-Ukraine conflict now. Ukrainian Black Sea port of Odessa was struck by a Russian missile on Monday, leaving 4 dead and 28 injured. Ukrainian Navy spokesperson said that the strike was conducted by an Iskander-M ballistic missile with a cluster warhead. The road-mobile short-range ballistic missile with a range of up to 500 kilometers are harder to intercept. Odessa has been a frequent target of Russian missile and drone attacks, particularly port infrastructure. The frontline situation worsens for Ukraine as it awaits delivery of Western weapons, especially from the US. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said this as he met NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg in Kyiv. Zelensky said some of the aid had started to arrive, but added that it needed to be delivered faster. His comments come after the US agreed to a $61 billion package of mostly military aid for Ukraine. While on his part, Stoltenberg expressed optimism that when the arms were delivered, it would help turn the tide. The debris from a missile that landed in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv on January 2nd was from a North Korean Hwasong-11 series ballistic missile. Now, according to the 32-page report by the United Nations sanctions monitors, I quote, debris recovered from a missile that landed in Kharkiv in Ukraine on 2nd of January 2024 derives from a DPRK Hwasong-11 series missile and is in violation of the arms embargo on North Korea. However, neither did they identify from where the missile was launched nor by whom. North Korea has been under UN sanctions for its ballistic missile and nuclear programs since 2006, and those measures have been strengthened over the years. In other news, let's turn focus to a recent firing incident in the US now. 4 law enforcement officers were killed and another 4 were wounded in Charlotte, North Carolina. The incident occurred when the officers who were killed were attempting to serve a warrant for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. They arrived at a residence where the suspect was located and he began firing on the officers. In return firing, one suspect was killed and 2 others were taken into custody. US President Joe Biden was briefed on the incident and has spoken with North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. Haiti's Transition Council will vote for the country's next president on Tuesday as part of the efforts to bring the Caribbean country under control amid rampant gang violence. The Transition Council took power in a ceremony on Thursday, formalizing the resignation of former Prime Minister Ariel Henry. The transitional government's mandate runs until February 2026, by when there are slated to be elections and cannot be renewed. The Council's installation is seen as a key step towards deployment of a multinational security mission Henry requested in 2022 and the United Nations approved more than 6 months ago. Mexico held its second presidential debate on Sunday night, April 28th. With just a little more than 1 month from the June election, the focus was on climate change. Mexico's main opposition presidential candidate, Xochitl Gálvez, called her rival frontrunner Claudia Sheinbaum the candidate of lies during the pre-election debate. The attack by Gálvez comes as the latest opinion polls show that she is struggling to gain momentum with 5 weeks to go before the June 2 election. Sheinbaum, for her part, vowed to improve water recycling in Mexico, which has been facing drought and widespread water shortages. She frequently made reference to the achievements of the current government of President López Obrador. Panama's presidential hopefuls made a last dash for votes on Sunday as campaigning closed ahead of the vote on 5th of May. In Panama City, frontrunner Jose Raul Molino rallied the supporters. Molino replaced former President Ricardo Martinelli after he was banned from running due to a prison conviction last year on money laundering charges. In La Correra, Rumolo Rao, who is second placed in the polls, called on the voters to turn out and get him past the finish line. Also in Panama City, Martin Torrijos campaigned on an anti-corruption ticket. The former president has been placed third in the most opinion polls. With 8 candidates set to appear on the ballot, pundits are predicting a tight race. Georgia faces more protests this week as lawmakers resume debate on a foreign agents law, which was introduced to Parliament earlier this month. Thousands of people protested against the bill for days when it passed its first hurdle in Parliament in mid-April. Since then, students have been protesting on a nightly basis, facing off the police. The EU has repeatedly said the bill is a threat. Britain and the United States have also opposed the bill, while Hungary and Russia have defended it. The bill would force organizations receiving more than 20% of their funding from abroad to register as foreign agents. A parliamentary committee approved the bill's second reading on Monday in a tense hearing from which all opposition members were expelled. Parliament is expected to approve the second of the 3 readings on Tuesday amid the opposition protests. The Philippines and the U.S. troops are participating in the amphibious assault drills as part of their annual 2-week joint military exercises. The drills run until May 10th amid high tensions between Beijing and Manila, who both have claims to maritime territory in the South China Sea, as Laura Westbrook gets us more from Hong Kong.
The Balikatan, or shoulder-to-shoulder military exercises, take place every year, and they involve some 16,000 mostly American and Filipino troops. But for the first time, the Philippine Coast Guard will take part, as well as the French Navy, and they will take place some 12 nautical miles outside of the Philippines' territorial waters. They are also simulating retaking enemy-occupied islands facing Taiwan and the South China Sea. And this is significant because we have seen increased clashes between the Philippine Coast Guard and Chinese vessels when the Philippines has gone on these resupply missions. Now, the U.S. Secretary of State recently visited China last week, and he said that freedom of navigation in the South China Sea was incredibly vital. This is an incredibly strategic area of the region. It sees trillions of trade pass through every year. The response from China has been that the Philippines bringing in other countries to flex its muscles in the South China Sea will only undermine regional stability. Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong, reporting for DD India.
Beijing and Manila have reportedly clashed in recent months at the submerged reef, which Philippines says is in its exclusive economic zone, but which China also claims as its own. In the latest, both sides witnessing standoff and traded accusations over aggressive maneuvers there, and the Philippines recently summoned a Chinese diplomat over the actions. Tensions flared again as China's Coast Guard said on Tuesday that it barred a Philippine Coast Guard ship and another vessel from waters adjacent to the Scarborough Shoal. Meanwhile, the Philippines Coast Guard accused its Chinese counterpart on Tuesday of using water cannon in a disputed area of the South China Sea, which damaged one of its vessels. China and Philippines previously said they would seek better communications and management around skirmishes in the vast South China Sea, but tensions have increased recently, especially after Philippines forged stronger diplomatic and military ties with the United States. You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, tragic incident in Peru, 25 killed and 13 injured in a bus accident. Spewing ash and lava, Indonesia's Ruang volcano off the island of Sulawesi erupts again.
Hype versus facts. In-depth news and analysis with experts who will help you decide why this election matters. DD India is the main election headquarters with numbers most accurate, data most reliable, and viewership across the platforms. Stay tuned to the Great Indian Election only on weekdays at 8:30 p.m. IST and 1500 hours GMT.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get you more international updates. From Tuesday, border officials in the United Kingdom will be carrying out physical checks on certain food and plants coming from the European Union. Now, 3 years after the country left the European Union, business groups warn the checks will push up costs and could lead to some items disappearing from the British supermarkets. Julia Chapman gets us more from London.
For decades, fresh food coming to the UK from the European Union could be imported at minimal hassle. As part of the bloc, the UK had the same sanitary standards as other members. But ever since it left the EU, a change has been looming.
My Lords, the controls set out in our new Border Target Operating Model, BTOM, represent a comprehensive assessment of the biosecurity and public health risks presented by imports, together with the risk of relevant pests and diseases. They allow us to assess our confidence in the exporting country's production standards and health controls. The BTOM aims to strike the right balance between allowing trade to flow and to protecting our domestic producers from threats such as African swine fever.
From now on, meat, dairy, fruit, vegetables and plants coming from the EU will face possible inspection. Anything that poses a medium risk to biosecurity will be checked visually and with temperature readings. British businesses importing from the EU will have to pay $180 a consignment. It's a significant cost as the UK imports 45% of its food. The government says in practice fewer than 1 in 100 shipments will be physically inspected, and it defends the cost to businesses, arguing that an outbreak of disease would be far more expensive. But industry groups say the changes will bring unintended consequences. There are warnings that the new rules could lead to shortages. Some wholesalers are turning away from the UK market because of the added bureaucracy and cost. And a rainy spring has led farmers to expect poor harvests this year, making the country even more reliant on imports.
Our concern is that this will disproportionately impact smaller operators, and we could see them withdraw from the market. That could subsequently reduce the choice that we have on shelves, and inevitably these additional costs have to be picked up somewhere in the supply chain. Many of our members are already operating under very tight margins.
The higher import prices will ultimately be passed on to the consumer. After the rate of inflation had been falling, the UK could see costs rise once again. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
Migrants on the US-Mexico border were picked up by the US Border Patrol after crossing the border from Mexico into the United States on Monday to transport them to San Diego for processing. For months now, makeshift camps have seen migrants pass by in the eastern San Diego desert, where they wait to be processed by the border officials. Meanwhile, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said on Monday that he had spoken with US President Joe Biden on keeping the country's shared border open to legal immigration. The two spoke over phone on Sunday afternoon, López Obrador said in a regular press conference.
But that's the way things are. The economy is doing very well. And yesterday we talked about that and about keeping the border open so that those doing their legal paperwork can go to the United States but not allowing irregular migration. We communicate regularly. To give you an idea of the 12,000 migrants per day on the northern border, since January we have been at the half that number.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said on Monday that he had decided to stay in office after days of publicly weighing his future. Sanchez made his announcement in a televised address, bringing an abrupt close to a 5-day drama. Sanchez had announced that he might quit in response to a corruption investigation into his wife, which he said was baseless and orchestrated by his right-wing political opponents. In his subsequent address, he said that he had informed the monarch of his decision to stay after having been encouraged by widespread expressions of support over the weekend. Argentina's oilseed and maritime worker unions kicked off a strike on Monday to protest a labor reform bill backed by radical libertarian President Javier Milei. Argentina is one of the world's main exporters of processed soybeans, and revenue from commodity exports are a major source of foreign currency needed to pay down debt and also finance imports for the cash-strapped government amid a prolonged economic slide. The strike started just after lawmakers in Argentina's lower house of Congress began debate on 2 sweeping economic reform bills proposed by Milei that call for privatization and tighter fiscal policy, as well as taxes on high salaries and a labor reform. In a tragic incident, a bus crashed in the Andean mountains of northern Peru, killing 25 people and injuring 13 more. The bus was heading to the town of Sorochuco on Sunday evening when it overturned and crashed down a slope into a river. 3 days of mourning has been announced. Accidents are relatively common along Peru's precarious roads, with around 24 people dying in a crash in September and at least 24 dying when a bus plunged off a cliff in January last year. Flash floods have wreaked havoc across central Kenya, killing at least 45 people and injuring over 110 others. People in villages near Mai Mahiu, about 37 miles from the capital Nairobi, were swept away as they slept. Rescue efforts are continuing to pull people out of the mud, with fears that the death toll could rise. Police initially blamed the flooding on a burst dam. However, the Ministry of Water later said that it was caused by a river tunnel under a railway embankment becoming blocked with debris. The deaths have brought the overall toll across Kenya from heavy rains and flooding since March to over 140. More than 185,000 people have been displaced. The world is experiencing intense weather conditions lately. Heat waves, floods, hailstorms have created havoc globally. Here's a report on how the world is coping with adverse weather conditions.
From heat waves to devastating floods, the world is in the grip of extreme weather conditions. In India, strong heat waves are wreaking havoc in several regions, prompting warnings from the weather department to brace for a hot and humid summer.
Means unbearable, simply unbearable. This heat we have not witnessed this last 50 years or something like that. This is tremendous, scorching heat and unbearable. What else I could say?
Bangladesh is also feeling the heat, with record-breaking temperatures leading to the closure of primary schools and educational institutions in many districts, including the capital Dhaka.
I have never experienced such heat in my life. Yes, summers would be hot, but there would have been gusts of winds and rain. But it's not happening this time. People are suffering a lot.
Philippines has also shut schools and warned of overloading on its power grid, as authorities across Southeast Asia have issued a series of health alerts arising from a deadly heat wave in the nation.
Here in the Philippines, it is extremely hot now. The heat burns my skin. It's not like the usual summer heat that is tolerable. Now I can barely stay long out in the heat.
Extreme weather fluctuations aren't limited to just a few countries. Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan and Singapore are also grappling with scorching temperatures, prompting urgent warnings from weather departments. Meanwhile, in Kenya's Mai Mahiu region, at least 42 people have lost their lives in floods caused by a burst dam, with authorities fearing casualties may further rise.
I have lost my 5 relatives, my mother, my cousin, my 2 nephews and a neighbor who came to seek refuge here.
Across the border in China, nature's fury is on a full display, with a heavy hailstorm hitting Fuzhou, snow covering parts of Hebei province and a deadly tornado tearing through Guangzhou. As Southeast Asia navigates through the tumultuous seas of climate change, the world's attention turns to Turin, Italy, where a 2-day gathering of G7 ministers is underway, focused on addressing the urgent issues of climate, energy and the environment, signaling hope for collective action in the face of adversity.
The group of 7 energy ministers on Monday pledged to close their coal plants in the first half of the 2030s, potentially setting a global example for fighting climate crisis. G7 energy and ecological transition ministers have agreed to exit from coal by 2035. On Tuesday, the ministers will issue a final communique detailing the G7 commitments to decarbonize their economies. The ministers were also pondering potential restrictions to Russian imports of liquefied natural gas to Europe, which the European Commission is due to propose in the short term. The agreement on coal marks a significant step in the direction indicated last year by the COP28 United Nations Climate Summit in December to transition away from coal, oil and gas. In the third Nepal Investment Summit, the government of Nepal made a strong case for investments in the hilly nation for its IT sector and green energy. The second day of the summit concluded with investments worth 9.13 billion rupees for 4 different projects. The Department of Industry inaugurated the system of foreign investment approval. Foreign investors can apply to establish a new company with 100% share ownership or joint venture or investment capital in an already operating company through an automatic route. The automatic route is expected to save the investors time and money in making investments in Nepal. Minister for Communications and Information Technology Rekha Sharma said that the government was determined to make Nepal an international hub of IT and appealed to investors to partner in Nepal's digital transformation and prosperity through investment in the IT sector. A quick look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world now. 6 months after Hurricane Otis unleashed its fury on Acapulco in the early hours of October 25th, residents are still rebuilding their lives and livelihoods. Despite the efforts, the pace of reconstruction has been slow, leaving many residents displaced and without job opportunities. According to locals, it will take 3 to 4 years to rebuild Acapulco fully. Indonesia's Ruang volcano off the island of Sulawesi erupted again on Tuesday, spewing ash and lava. Earlier this month, an eruption had led to hundreds of evacuations and an airport closure. Authorities have urged residents not to get near the volcano. Indonesia straddles the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, an area of high seismic activity where multiple tectonic plates meet. A migrant from Thailand to the U.S., Charlie Sifrin, won $1.3 billion from Powerball jackpot in Oregon on Monday. Sifrin is battling cancer since 2016. The prize, the 8th largest in the U.S. history, will be split with Charlie's wife Duapun and his friend Liza. The 6th edition of the annual Briggs and Water Light Festival was held in Italy's Bresciano on Sunday. This year's theme focused on melting glaciers to raise awareness on the effects of climate change. It was lit up by 36 light installations. We're heading for a short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. But after the break, as the nation readies for the third phase of polling on 7th of May, Political leaders sweat it out with all of their might to woo the voters. In line with the election coverage at DD India, we get you a special report on the hand-rolled cigarettes industry of West Bengal. A unique initiative towards manufacturing products from pine needles and reducing plastics use. Stay with us to know more.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. A quick relook at the top stories once again. US Secretary of State hopes Hamas will accept Israel's extraordinary generous Gaza truce and hostages release offer. Biden asks leaders from Qatar and Egypt to exert all efforts to secure the release of hostages in separate phone calls. Hamas to return with a written response. Three law enforcement officers fatally shot and 5 others wounded while serving a warrant in Charlotte in North Carolina. At least one suspected attacker found dead after a 3-hour standoff. Authorities say 2 shooters involved in the attack. Flash floods wreak havoc in central Kenya. Over 50 people swept away. Toll may rise. Police initially blames the flooding on a burst dam. G7 countries set global climate precedent, commits to coal phase out by 2035 with shutting down their coal-fired power plants in the first half of 2030s. Ministers will issue a final communique with the details on Tuesday. And India has rejected a story published in the Washington Post saying the report made unwarranted and unsubstantiated imputations on a serious matter. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said there is an ongoing investigation of high-level committee set up by the Government of India to look into the security concerns shared by the US government on networks of organized criminals, terrorists and others. In an interview to a private channel, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi slammed Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's proposal for a national X-ray or surveys to redistribute wealth, saying that it reflected Maoist ideology, which has never benefited the world.
मतलब क्या है जी? मतलब हर परिवार में जाना, घर घर छापा मारना, अगर किसी अनाज के डिब्बे में किसी महिला ने अपने गहने छपा के रखे हैं, उसको भी एक्सरे किया जाएगा, उनके गहने ले लिए जाएंगे, जमीनों का हिसाब किताब किया जाएगा और फिर उसको रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूट करेंगे। ये दुनिया में एक माओवादी विचार ने सब किया हुआ है, दुनिया बर्बाद हो चुकी है। ये पूरी तरह अर्बन नक्सल उस सोच का सीधा सीधा प्रगटीकरण है।
And now we get to the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. Ahead of the third phase of Indian general elections, campaigning continues to gain steam on Tuesday. 93 seats are going to polls on May 7th in this phase. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing poll rallies in Maharashtra and Telangana. 11 constituencies in Maharashtra will vote in this phase, while Telangana will go to polls in the fourth phase. Union Home Minister Amit Shah will be addressing a public meeting in West Bengal. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will be addressing a public meeting in Madhya Pradesh's Khandwa and Birwani. Opposition Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is scheduled to address a public meeting in MP's Bhind. 8 seats in the state are going to polls in this phase. All right, to just get more on the poll pulse across the country, we are joined in by our reporters. We are joined in by DD India correspondent Akshay Dongre. He's joining us from Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh, and Amritpal Singh is joining us from Firozabad in Uttar Pradesh. Good morning, both of you. Amrit, first to you. When we talk of the poll schedule on May 7th, the constituencies which will be going to polls, get us an overview of that. Help us understand the political landscape spread over these particular constituencies that will be going to polls on May 7th.
Okay. Pretty, these 10 constituencies that go to polls are in the south central part or southwest actually part of Uttar Pradesh. These are Bareilly, Sambhal, Agra, Fatehpur Sikri, Hathras, Mainpuri. These constituencies are primarily different from the first the constituencies that went to polls in the first two phases. That was really western Uttar Pradesh, what is generally referred to as the Jatland, because the Jats are a dominant force here. Here in this part, Yadavs are a significant voice. Their numbers are large. In some constituencies like Agra and Sambhal, there is a sizable Muslim population as well. Why I mentioned that is because the Muslim Yadav combine is traditionally looked at as the vote bank of the Samajwadi Party. Caste plays a very important role here. Though the BJP is a dominant force here, in 2019 they won 8 out of the 10 constituencies. 2014 I think they had 7. So this time around also they have strong candidates. It's essentially a contest between the Samajwadi Party and the BJP. On 3 seats the BSP is strongly in the fray. Their candidates are strong, so it's a 3-way contest there. Though the BSP has fielded candidates in all the 10 constituencies, but in 3 it's being widely perceived as that they are very much in the fray. So most constituencies it's between the Samajwadi Party and the BJP. There are constituencies like Mainpuri. If you remember 2019, Mulayam Singh Yadav had won that constituency, but then after he died, Dimple Yadav, his daughter-in-law and the wife of former Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav became an MP in the by-polls. She's the candidate from Mainpuri this time around against Javeer Singh Thakur of the BJP. So it's a strong contest there. The other seat that the Samajwadi Party had was Sambhal. So they would try and retain that or give a push to that, to retaining that. But the BJP is going all guns blazing to woo voters with the promises of the guarantees of Narendra Modi. Also, of course, the UP has the Yogi government here, so they're saying it's a double-engine sarkar or a double-engine government. So that's what they're pitching on. Samajwadi Party, meanwhile, is playing on the sentiment of the Yadavs and the other OBCs like Lodhs, Shakors, etc. So it's essentially a battle between these two blocks, apart from where the BSP is.
All right, Amrit. From here, I'll bring in Akshay. Akshay, good morning. You're there in Bhopal. We've seen how political leaders are crisscrossing the state to woo the voters. 8 seats in the state are going to polls in this phase. Help us understand what are the key factors of the seats which are going to polls. What are the viewpoints, or what are the takes of the voters? Help us understand the political landscape in these 8 seats as well.
Well, Preeti, if we look at the political landscape of Madhya Pradesh, then it has been dominated majorly by the Bharatiya Janata Party. There are 29 Lok Sabha constituencies in the state of Madhya Pradesh. In the last elections, in 2019 general elections of India, BJP managed to bag 28 seats. It was just 1 seat that went to the Indian National Congress. Even if we go further, in 2014, the Bharatiya Janata Party had managed to win 27 seats out of 29. So that is a huge we can say, a huge citadel of the Bharatiya Janata Party, where BJP has been outperforming its rivals, not just in 2014 when there was a Modi wave, but if we go further beyond in 2009 when the Indian National Congress in fact had won the general elections, even then the BJP had received more than the Congress party, with BJP winning 16 seats and the Congress party winning 12 seats. So that goes on to show that how comfortable Bharatiya Janata Party has been in Madhya Pradesh, but this time around from Bhopal, where we are right now, both the BJP and the Congress party have fielded new candidates. The Bharatiya Janata Party in fact has fielded Alok Sharma. The Indian National Congress has fielded Arun Srivastav as their candidate. Both are fresh faces. Alok Sharma, the BJP candidate, has served as a mayor as well. In fact, however, in the last legislative assembly, Alok Sharma had lost his election from North Bhopal. So this time around, he is going for a bigger seat, and there are hopes that the BJP may just try and manage to grab the seats and rather repeat the performance of 2019 once again. But if you talk about the number of seats that are going, in fact, there are not 8 but 9 seats, Preeti, because in the second phase, in the Betul constituency,
Yes.
the BSP, the Bahujan Samajwadi Party candidate passed away. Because of that, the election had to be delayed, and now along with the 8 seats that are going to polls this time around, there is a 9th one added, that is Betul.
Yes.
Apart from Guna, Gwalior, Bhopal, Vidisha, Rajghar. So these are some key contests. From Vidisha, the former Chief Minister is contesting, Shivraj Singh Chauhan. From Rajghar, Digvijay Singh of the Indian National Congress, another former Chief Minister, is contesting, and from Guna, we have Jyotiradittya Scindia, the Union Aviation Minister, that is contesting. So it's going to be a battle of strong leaders, big faces in Madhya Pradesh this time around.
All right, so it's going to be a strong battle. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us with those details and analysis from Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Thank you, Akshay, and thank you, Amrit. From here, we now turn focus to Manipur. Under tight security arrangements, repolling at 6 polling stations of the lone outer Manipur parliamentary seat is underway peacefully. And the 6 polling stations fall under Ukhrul, Chengai and Karong assembly segments. The Election Commission had announced repolling after violent incidents caused damage to EVMs and VVPATs, and it interrupted the voting process during Phase 2 general elections. Voting started at 7 a.m. and will continue till 4 p.m. All right, 4 West Bengal seats, Murshidabad, Jangipur, Uttar and Dakshin Maldaha, are going to polls in Phase 3 of India's general elections on 7th of May. At least 2 million voters in this region depend on the bidi or the hand-rolled cigarettes industry for their livelihood. Now, the industry is on decline due to several reasons ranging from high taxes to increased health consciousness. The workers' woes is a big electoral issue in these constituencies. Gautam Roy gets us more from Jangipur.
In a beedi factory in Aurangabad, men are hard at work. They do it all, from sorting to roasting and packaging beedis into bundles and packets, for a stagnant monthly pay of around $80. They say they have some social security, but it's only on paper.
हर महीने ESI का रुपया कटता है, लेकिन हमको कोई उसका सुविधा नहीं मिलता है. कोई कार्ड नहीं, कोई चिकित्सा का कोई व्यवस्था नहीं.
Beedis or hand-rolled cigarettes form a major part of the economy of this region around Jangipur constituency, which is going to polls in the 3rd phase of West Bengal on the 7th of May. It employs over 2 million workers, and both the workers and the industry itself have a range of issues in the election season, from low wages to high taxes, and they're becoming a major concern for all political parties in this phase. In villages all around Jangipur, women do nearly 80% of the rolling work in an unorganized work-from-home fashion for local contractors. They get a little over $2 for rolling 1,000 beedis. Most of them can only do 600 to 800 a day and work only a few days a week. After the GST regime was implemented, the beedi industry came under the 28% tax bracket. Its workers also develop health issues, even cancer, due to close proximity with tobacco for years. Rivals blame the TNC-ruled West Bengal government for the sorry state of affairs.
कोई बीड़ी श्रमिक का जो नज्जे मजूरी नहीं मिला, बीड़ी श्रमिक को सबको पाका मकान होना चाहिए। ये केंद्र का आइन में है, लेकिन ये मिल रहा है जो बीड़ी का साथ जो कोई युक्त नहीं है उसको मिल रहा है, जो किंग साइज सिगरेट खा रहा है उसको घर मिल रहा है।
Trinamool Congress's Jangipur candidate and sitting MP Khalilur Rahman is himself a BD baron. He says he'll address BD workers and industries issues after the elections.
इलेक्शन के बाद हमारा कोशिश रहेगा कि यूनियन के साथ मालिक एसोसिएशन को बैठा के मजदूरी को सेटल कराना, और जो एग्रीड है वही होगा, वो मजदूर को प्रॉपर मिल रहा है या नहीं मिल रहा है और ट्रेड यूनियन को देखना चाहिए।
BD is also called the poor man's cigarette, and yet livelihoods of millions depend on it. It's an industry in decline, and in poll season is looking for support from elected representatives. In Jangipur, West Bengal, with camera person Uttam Singh, Gautam Roy, DD India.
Kokrajhar was once the heartland of Bodo politics, centered around the demand for a separate Bodoland. But times have changed now. As Kokrajhar goes to polls on 7th of May, peace and development replaces separatist demands, heralding a new dawn for the region. Tapas Bhattacharya gets us more.
In Assam, gone are the days of militancy. A new dawn has risen. Kokrajhar, once synonymous with the demands for a separate state, now stands at the crossroads of peace and progress. The winds of change sweep through the landscape, erasing graffiti of division and discord.
This time people are voting for a peaceful Bitia. People are voting for a developed Bitia.
Right now there is a lot of peace here. There has been a lot of development here. New schemes and projects have come here.
All parties, including the prominent United People's Party Liberal, with the support of their allies, the BJP and Bodoland People's Front, promise a future where Kokrajhar shines as a beacon of growth at par with any developed region.
There has not been a single incident here in the last 3 years. The public here wants peace and security. That's why the leader who has brought peace and security here is the one that people here will vote for.
Gone are the days of separatist fervour. Now the clarion call is for peace, progress and prosperity. Kokrajhar constituency mirrors the intricacies of Indian democracy, marked by its distinct population mix, past voting trends and evolving dynamics. As Kokrajhar prepares for the elections, the agenda is clear: to pave the way for a brighter tomorrow.
As people cast their votes, they do so with the hope in their hearts, knowing that the future of Kokrajhar lies not in division but in unity and growth. For Kokrajhar, the journey towards a new horizon has only just begun. With camera person Naveen, this is Tapush Bhattacharya for DD India from Kokrajhar, Assam.
Himalayan Pine Company organized an event in Himachal Pradesh's Dharamshala as they take initiative towards manufacturing products from pine needles and reducing plastic use. As per the founder of the company, Abhinav Talwar, making products from pine leaves will not only reduce the incidence of forest fires but will also provide a plastic-free environment. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's turn focus to updates from the world of business now. India's share in global services exports has more than doubled over the last 18 years, and the rise of global capability centers, that is GCCs, has played a crucial role in the expansion. A global report was released on Monday which said that the proliferation of GCCs has given a boost to real estate, expanded services exports, added to economic growth, created jobs and led to rapid increase in revenues for the firms. GCCs are specialized offshore entities set up by companies operating across the world and support a raft of business processes. Reports said that India's services exports grew to a nearly $340 billion in 2023 at a CAGR of around 11% from 2005, outpacing goods export growth. Report also said that within the services, computer services remain the dominant subsector, accounting for nearly half of India's services exports in 2023. However, professional consulting exports have also been the fastest growing sector. Federal Reserve's May 1st policy review is the prime focus for markets this week. Investors are already anticipating a delay in its rate cuts after a batch of sticky U.S. inflation, and as officials including Chair Jerome Powell emphasize, even those plans are dependent on data. The Fed is seen holding its benchmark interest rate steady at 5.25% to 5.5% at the April 30th to May 1st meeting. Investors now see perhaps only a single cut this year, currently anticipated by November. All right, let's turn focus to sports now. In tennis, world number 2 Yannick Sinner overcame some hip discomfort and a less than perfect serving performance to advance past Russia's Pavel Kotov 6-2, 7-5 into the fourth round of the Madrid Open. The tournament's top seed in the absence of Novak Djokovic, Sinner will face another Russian, Karen Khachanov, next as he targets a third Masters 1000 title. For his part, Khachanov overcame Sinner's Italian compatriot Flavio Cobolli for 7-5, 6-4. Rafael Nadal survived a second set wobble to defeat Pedro Cachin for 6-1, 6-7, 6-3 in the Madrid Open third round. Nadal held his nerve as he was tested by the 91st ranked Argentine, who won his maiden ATP title at the 2023 Swiss Open. Both players broke early in the third set, which stood at 2 each, but local favourite Nadal then broke twice more to emerge as the winner. Nadal next faces Czech Jiří Lehecka, who beat Brazilian qualifier Thiago Monteiro 6-4, 7-6 to reach the fourth round. Talking of the women action, world number 1 Iga Swiatek made light work of Spain's Sara Sorribes Tormo in the fourth round of the Madrid Open, wrapping up an emphatic 6-1, 6-0 victory in just over an hour. The result sees last year's losing finalist continue her bid for a maiden Masters 1000 title on clay, while leaving no Spanish representation left in the women's singles draw. Meanwhile, defending champion Aryna Sabalenka came back from a set down against world number 15 Danielle Collins, putting an end to the 30-year-old American's 15-match winning streak, while keeping her own hopes alive of becoming the first three-time winner in Madrid since Petra Kvitova. In an all-American fourth-round matchup, Madison Keys upset number 3 seed Coco Gauff to reach a first-ever quarterfinal of the tournament. Keys fought back from 2-4 down in the third set to prevail 7-6, 4-6, 6-4 against Gauff. Real Madrid will take on Bayern Munich in their first leg of Champions League semi-final in Germany on Tuesday. Real Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti said that his side will not make the mistake of looking past Bayern Munich despite the rivals' disappointing domestic campaign. Ancelotti said European pedigree matters and the six-time winners will have extra motivation to win the last trophy they can fight for. Bayern reached the Champions League semis for the first time in 4 years with a 3-2 aggregate win over Arsenal. Meanwhile, the 14-time champions Real made the last four after knocking out holders Manchester City on penalties. On to cricket now. In today's IPL match, Lucknow Super Giants are up against Mumbai Indians in Lucknow. Both the teams have suffered defeat in their previous matches. While Lucknow finds itself in the mid-table tussle, Mumbai is trying to move up from the bottom half. After two losses in the last two games, Mumbai's playoff chances have nosedived, and if they lose today, their bid for the last four would be practically over. Though Lucknow are also coming off a defeat, they are in a much better position on the points table. A win against Mumbai could even propel them to second position. Apart from the advantage of playing at home, they will be boosted by return of Mayank Yadav, who has passed his fitness test. The Lucknow Super Giants have played 4 games against Mumbai Indians. The Super Giants have been dominant force in the clash with 3 wins, while the Mumbai Indians have won a single match. Women's Championship Tour re-qualification hopefuls set the pace at Bonzoy Gold Coast Pro World Surf League event. Leading the way was defending champion India Robinson of Australia, who came through her heat against compatriot Nikki Van Dijk to go through to the last 16. All surfers will be chasing valuable points as they look to claim places on the Champions Tour. A unique kind of cultural sports sea tourism season began in Vietnam's Da Nang. Sea tourism season has officially begun in Vietnam. The program is a unique cultural sports and tourism event of the city. All right, that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. Now, this app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on your screens to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.